Hello, it is Steve Selig, the founder of FitTest. In this short video, I'm going to walk you through the various functions of FitTest, and I'm going to start with the free areas of the FitTest, which are available to non-subscribers, people who may be considering to subscribe to the application. So first of all, we can anyone can access the free articles on FitTest, and these really show what FitTest does and tips for using the app, and then a series of other topics which are related to the platform that you can go through. So at the bottom of those articles there are some scales there for ratings of perceived exertion and ratings of perceived breathlessness, and at the bottom there is an exercise record sheet that I have prepared and made available to you that you can use if you're not standing beside your device. But if you do have your device present when you're using FitTest, then you can enter the data as you're going, and that means that you'll have an estimation of fitness for your client immediately on finishing the exercise test. So now the other area that's available to non-subscribers are the videos, which includes another instructional video of what FitTest does, a brief video, and then how to use all four modes of exercise, starting from walk, run, cycle, and step. So then we go into the subscriber only area, and that will be, if you are a subscriber, you'll get access to clients, and we're now going to add a new client. And I'll just make up a birth date. We'll make that female and we'll add that client. So now I've added a client, female client, 53 years of age. I'm now going to start a new test. And so we have cycle, step, walk test, run test, and step test. I'll take you through a few options. I won't go through all four of those options. And so we'll just look at step test first. So if we go to step test, we have the chance to use the standard protocol. And if we use the standard protocol, it will pre-populate stepping speeds from 12 all the way to 34. You don't have to use all of those. You can delete any of these rows, and you can also add rows to those options. So if we didn't use the standard step protocol, we could just set up our own protocol, and it would then remove all of these, and you could just overwrite those. So we can also type in the name of the test. So we might put in step 1 as the name of our protocol, and I'll come back to that a bit later. So then if we did a run test, for run test we have two protocols built in. Bruce protocol, for example, is pre-populated, and we could remove the rows that we're not using. These are in kilometers per hour. Or we could use the modified Bruce protocol, and that is shown there as well. And again, delete the rows that you're not using. But what I might prefer to do is select my own protocol. So if I just go to walk and then go back to run, we can now put in any combination of speeds and gradients that we choose to do so. And we might call that run 1, for example. All right, and then if we go to walk test, we have two other protocols there. We have the Norton protocol that can be pre-populated, such as here, or we have the Belke treadmill protocol that can be selected. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually use a cycle test, and we don't have any pre-populated cycle tests. However, you can use the published cycle test and enter those, the power and heart rates corresponding to that, into these boxes here. And remember, you can delete and add any number of rows to this test. So I'm just going to make up some data now. Before I do that, it's really important that you put in the weight. So I'll just make up the weight as 77 kilograms. You have to put in this data before you start. Heart Heart rate peak I'll make 155. Resting heart rate I'll make 55. And I'm going to change that to cycle 1. Or let's just make it easy and call it C1 as the name of our test. So you must populate where I'm pointing to here first before you start entering your data. So I'm just going to start at 80 watts and I'm just going to put in a few rows of data: 90 watts, 100, 110, 120 and 130, and then I'll put in some heart rates. The heart rates I'm going to put in, I'll just make them up. So and I'm going to it's important to delete the rows that you're not using. I can put in RPEs if I like. Just to save time, I'll just put in a couple. So the first ratings of perceived exertion might be 8 out of 20, and then the last 3 might be 13 and then 15 or 15. Okay. So what it's done now is it's estimated VO2 peak at 29.9. And we'll go down and we'll have a look at the graphs. So it's now generated these graphs. So the red dot is the predicted estimated VO2 peak, and it's also estimated here against age. So this shows where the client is against age. We have a 53-year-old client who has a VO2 estimated to be 29.9. So that's where this client is sitting here. And here I've just put in some random heart rates, but it turned out to be quite linear, and that generated this estimated VO2 here. Now, it is important to delete the rows that you are not using, because that will then allow these calculations to be made. They won't be calculated where those empty rows are. The next thing to do is to generate a test report, which I have now done. And now we can start a program linked directly to this exercise test. And I now want to show you all of the options you have for programming. So we can pick any of these programming types. So we could design a cycling program based on heart rate, based on power, based on percent VO2 peak, percent VO2 range, or percent heart rate range. And then we can move over into other forms of programming: walk based on speed and gradient, walk based on percent VO2 peak and speed, walk based on percent VO2 range and speed, and then run for the same sort of 3 options, and then step exercise based on the other 3 options. Okay, it's always a good idea to program where you can, using the same mode of exercise that you use to test. So I'm going to do that now. And let's suppose we just pick a cycling program based on percent of VO2 range. So what I'll do now is I'll just make up a few ranges. I'll just start with 60, 70, 80, 90. That will do for now. And then we might drop back to 60 for interval training, back up to 90, 60, 90, 60, 90, and then we'll just step it down. For example, this is an interval training program, obviously, that I'm doing here. I've just stepped that back down to 60. And now again, it's important that I remove the rows that I'm not using. Just scroll back to here. And I'm just going to make up some times here. We'll just use all 1-minute stages just to demonstrate this. And you can see how quick it is to get data in. Actually, we just want to add one more row there to make that 60 and 1. And so we have a 13-minute program. And if we go to have a look what that looks like, it's a stepped up and down interval training program using active recovery methods, and then stepping down at the end, stepping up at the beginning, stepping down at the end. And the maximum intensity is 7.8 METs, the average intensity is 6.6, the total time is 13 minutes, and the kilojoule estimated for this session is 462 kilojoules, which means you'd need to repeat this 13-minute session 82 times to be equivalent to 1 kilogram of body fat. So I'm happy with that. We can save that program now, and we can now go to view the program report here. So we've got that there. There's the saved program. That's what we've seen. And now if we go back to clients at this stage and we go to the same new client and we want to start a new test, there's just one or two other things I want to show you. So suppose if we went to a walk test, and I'll just enter some made up data. Now it says here extra weight. So for these weight bearing exercises of walk, run and step, you can add extra weight. I really wouldn't recommend that. I would think the default is going to always be, or pretty much always be, 0. It would only be if someone wanted to, train for a hiking type of exercise where they're going on a hike and they're carrying a backpack. Then it might be useful to add some extra weight in the form of some kind of backpack here. I'm not going to use one of the protocols. I'm just going to make up my own. And so now we've got, we're not using the extra weight. We're just going to put in speed and gradient. So I might decide for this walking test that the person's going to walk at 6 all the way through. And the gradient will just go from 0 to 2% gradient, 4% gradient, 6%, 8%. This is just making it up. You can work out your own for your client. We're now going to delete the unused rows and we'll just make up some heart rates. And we'll put in 162 for the last one. And again, we can just make up some RPEs. There we are. And that's estimated VO2 peak this time for 40, which is a pretty high VO2 peak. And when you go down here, we've got the linear relationship of the VO2s, the estimated VO2s against heart rate. And we also have where the person is on the age graph here. And again, we could generate a test report there, save that, close that, and then we can start a program again. And this time it's a walking test. And so what we can do here is, again, we have all these options, but at the top we have these 5 options for walking. We have another 3 options for running, and another 3 for stepping and cycling. Okay. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is in the client area, again, we can look at this same client here and we can actually compare tests. Now, because when you go to compare tests, we need to mark these in order to compare, but we don't compare cycle with walk. What we'll compare is the first cycle test with a second cycle test with a third cycle test, etc., and the same for walking. So this is not really valid now, but if I was to compare, I would get a panel like this, which just at the moment just shows 1 test for cycle and 1 test for walk. But really where this comes into its own is where we are comparing multiple tests for the same mode of exercise. And then because we didn't do running or stepping, we don't have anything in those graphs there. So that's another thing that's really useful. That'll become much more useful as you collect sequential data for your one client, where you're presumably using the same mode of exercise for your testing. So it will only validly compare tests for the same mode of exercise. So really that's all I wanted to show you, and I just want to emphasize that if you are a subscriber to FitTest, I am always here to offer online or even offline help in the form of contacting me via this help email address, info@myfitness.com.au, and we can But depending on what you're wanting to learn about, I might even be able to set up an online interaction with you via Zoom or Skype or something like that. So very happy to do that. I'm here to help my subscribers. You'll notice also at the bottom menu there, there will be FAQs as we build up the library of FAQs, and there's also the privacy policy and the terms and conditions. I would really recommend that you do read the terms and conditions, because you do have to be careful about the login conditions. So that's really all I had to say to you. I welcome you to the platform of FitTest, and I look forward to interacting with you down the track. Good luck with your exercise testing and programming.